We will now proceed with the consideration of the outcome of Zambia based on the report of the Zambia as contained in documents A/HRC/37/14 and A/HRC/37/14/addendum 1. This report and its addendum, together with the additional information that we will now hear and that will be provided by Zambia, will constitute the outcome of the review and shall be adopted by the Council through a standardized decision. I now have the pleasure to give the floor to Mrs. Margaret Marie Lungu Kayemba, Minister Councillor Chargé d'Affaires ad interim, Deputy Permanent Representative of Zambia Mission to the United Nations, to present additional information on the review. Ms. Kayemba, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you a report on the outcomes of Zambia's third cycle national report on the Universal Periodic Review at the 28th session of the Universal Periodic Review Working Group. I would like to take this opportunity to commend you, Madam Vice President, for your efforts in protecting and promoting human rights. Further, I give my high commendation to the Secretariat of the Human Rights Council for ensuring that this session is a success. The UPR is a platform which provides an opportunity to all member states to declare what actions they have taken to improve the human rights situations in their respective countries and to overcome challenges to the enjoyment of human rights. The Republic of Zambia was reviewed on the 13th of November 2017 at the 28th session of the Working Group on the Universal Periodic Review. The report was adopted by the Working Group on the 16th of November 2017, and the adoption of the report was followed by a compilation of recommendations which were made by the distinguished delegates from various member countries. Madam Vice President, since the review, the Republic of Zambia has examined all the recommendations which were made and has held consultations with various stakeholders through the Ministry of Justice. Madam Vice President, Zambia is now in a position to confirm the following. The deferred recommendation 130.1 is supported, and recommendation 130.2, which was also deferred, is noted. The following 92 recommendations, which were previously noted, have now been supported. 131.1 to 131.4, 131.11 to 131.53, 131.57, 131.61 to 131.92, 131.99 to 131.102, and 131.104 to 131.111. Recommendation 131.10, which was previously noted, is now supported in part, with Zambia expressing its support for that part of the recommendation relating to the ratification of the optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, as well as the 3 optional protocols to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That part of the recommendation relating to the ratification of the 2nd optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, aiming at the abolition of the death penalty, is noted. Consequently, a total of 183 recommendations now enjoy support of Zambia. 1 recommendation is supported in part, and 19 recommendations have been noted. Madam Vice President, the recommendations which have been supported will form the basis for preparation of an action plan which will be used as a guide to the implementation process prior to the 4th cycle review. The action plan, once completed, will complement the implementation of the 7th National Development Plan period, 2017 to 2021, and will also contribute to the monitoring of the action plan. Civil society organizations are encouraged to complement the government efforts in order to ensure the effective enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Zambia has also commenced the process to establish a permanent mechanism which will be responsible for monitoring all recommendations. Madam Vice President, one very crucial matter worth noting is the efforts towards abolishing the death penalty in Zambia, as was reported at the 28th session of the UPR Working Group. The death penalty is enshrined under Part 3 of the Constitution, and in order to amend Part 3 of the Zambian Constitution, it is a requirement for such amendments to be subjected to a referendum. Unfortunately, when the proposed amendments to Part 3 of the Constitution were subjected to a referendum, the amended Bill of Rights could not be adopted as it did not meet the required threshold. I wish to state that despite having retained the death penalty in its statute books, Zambia is a de facto abolitionist state. The last executions in Zambia were carried out in 1997. Since then, successive presidents have been reluctant to authorize any executions and have been commuting them to life imprisonment. In October 2016, Madam Vice President, the Zambian cabinet passed a resolution to support the United Nations resolution to establish a global moratorium on the issue of the death penalty. Madam Vice President, Zambia remains resolute in enhancing human rights for the well-being of all persons without distinction as to their race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. As I conclude, I wish to further take this opportunity to thank the United Nations systems which have been providing appropriate support within their areas of mandates, the Human Rights Commission for its checks and balances, and the civil society organizations for their dedication in sensitizing members of the general public on human rights issues. In view of Zambia's determination to continue addressing the outstanding challenges that may inhibit the fulfillment of human rights under the 7th National Development Plan, I still appeal for your support in the promotion and protection of human rights. The Republic of Zambia sincerely appreciates all the recommendations that were made at its review and remains committed to the Universal Periodic Review process. We shall continue to put our efforts into action, and we are ready to build the courage needed to face all complexities we are facing in the world today for the protection of all human rights. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank Mrs. Margaret Kayamba for her statement. In accordance with paragraph 13 of Human Rights Council Resolution 16/21, I will now give the floor to the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission of Zambia, Mr. Manfred Z. Vandenga, who will make a video statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Human Rights Commission wishes to recognize the 78 countries that made oral written submissions, civil society organizations which provided parallel reports, and the Zambian government for their commitment to open and transparent processes in reporting to the Human Rights Council. The Zambia Human Rights Commission takes the UPR process seriously as it provides practical steps towards promotion of human rights and opportunities for learning from other jurisdictions. It is our hope that the Zambian government's firm commitment to putting in place a UPR implementation mechanism with a clear time-bound implementation action plan, combined with the resolve of the member states, of some of whom participated in the UPR for Zambia, to assist by sharing experiences and capacity development, will enhance the progressive realization of human rights in Zambia. Mr. President, we note the 183 recommendations which were accepted by the government of the Republic of Zambia. We would expect the government to ratify the optional protocols, especially regarding death penalty, as government has accepted the moratorium on the implementation of execution of death sentences. The Commissioner is nonetheless optimistic government will continue ongoing dialogue regarding exploration of possibilities to expand the Bill of Rights, including the incorporation of economic, social, and cultural rights as envisaged in the failed referendum of 2016 before the next general elections in 2021. The Commission is committed to working with government, CSOs, and other stakeholders to ensure the UPR works to improve the state of human rights on the ground in Zambia. I thank you.
I wish to thank the Zambian Human Rights Commission for its statement, and before giving the floor to the member and observer states for the comments on the outcome of the review, I would like to inform you that the speaking time has again been set at 1 minute and 30 seconds for all states. I will now open the floor to member and observer states for their comments on the outcome of the review, and the first speaker on my list is Algeria, please.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. We thank the delegation of the Republic of Zambia for the presentation of complementary information on the third UPR of the country. We welcome the efforts deployed by Zambia for the promotion and protection of human rights, including through integrating many international standards into their domestic legal framework for persons with disabilities, for gender equality, and for the rights of refugees. We also welcome those measures taken to combat corruption, to develop the national judicial system, to combat trafficking in human beings, and protecting the environment. Zambia has accepted 183 recommendations, including those 2 made by Algeria on providing necessary resources to the National Human Rights Commission and protecting human rights and the environment in mining areas. We wish Zambia every success in implementing the recommendations accepted and recommend that the Council adopts the report on the third UPR of Zambia. Thank you.
The next speaker is Angola, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Angola congratulates the delegation of Zambia on the presentation of their final report, and we thank them for the supplementary information transmitted over this meeting. Angola is delighted to note that Zambia has favorably welcomed the recommendations which were made by states, in particular the one made by my delegation on improving health care establishments with a view to reducing maternal mortality. My delegation welcomes Zambia's intention to pursue its cooperation in an assiduous manner with the United Nations bodies to combat poverty, drought, and to guarantee the necessary social and economic conditions for the population of Zambia. To conclude, my delegation wishes the government of Zambia every success in implementing the recommendations accepted and recommends to the Council to adopt the final report which has been submitted. Thank you very much.
Madam, next speaker is Burundi, please.
Merci. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Burundi welcomes the delegation of Zambia and congratulates them on the recommendations accepted after their active participation in the third UPR cycle. My delegation is delighted to see the establishment of mechanisms to combat corruption, such as the Commission to Combat Corruption, the Office of the Comptroller General, the Integrity Committees in Public Institutions, and the National Prosecution Service. Burundi welcomes the legislative and institutional measures adopted by the Zambian government to combat slavery and trafficking in human beings. And we can note here the creation of the National Steering Committee, which is interministerial and is responsible to work with non-state actors to raise awareness amongst the general public and to provide adequate and accessible services for victims of trafficking. We note with satisfaction the adoption of the National Policy for Children, the National Policy for Gender Equality, and the different measures adopted to protect children against economic exploitation, including child labour. My country is delighted to see the noteworthy measures adopted by Zambia to provide better protection for the environment and a priority granted to national resources management and governance in the context of the 7th National Development Plan. To conclude, Burundi wishes Zambia every success in implementing those recommendations accepted and would ask the Council to adopt this report by consensus. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Speaker is China, please.
Madam Vice President, the Chinese delegation appreciates Zambia's constructive participation in the UPR. China thanks Zambia for accepting recommendations made by China and hopes that the government will continue to promote sustainable socio-economic development and raise living standards to build a solid foundation for the enjoyment of all human rights. The country should continue to develop medical and health programs, including enhancing the prevention and treatment of HIV/AIDS. China welcomes Zambia's reaffirmed commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights and wishes the country new and consistent achievements in this area. China supports the Council to endorse Zambia's UPR report. Thank you. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Now Congo has the floor, please.
Madam Vice President, Congo welcomes the delegation of Zambia and takes note with satisfaction of the presentation of the final report and the supplementary information provided during this meeting. My country welcomes the fact that Zambia has accepted the majority of those recommendations made by countries during the 3rd UPR. The implementation of these recommendations, in addition to those efforts already undertaken by the government of Zambia to promote and protect human rights, we are absolutely sure will see a consolidation of the rule of law in this country. We welcome the constant cooperation of Zambia with the UN human rights mechanisms and encourage Zambia to continue with this dynamic trend. My country calls upon the Council to adopt the present report and wishes Zambia every success in implementing the recommendations accepted. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur. The delegation of Cuba has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We would like to thank the delegation of Zambia for their presentation and for the addition made to the report of the working group of the UPR. We commend the country for the work they have undertaken in reviewing the recommendations presented to them. As a display of their commitment to the UPR mechanism, Zambia not only reviewed the 2 recommendations on which they have not previously decided in November 2017, but went further and reviewed the ones upon which they did take note. This means that the number of accepted recommendations presently stands at 183, plus 1 partially accepted recommendation. Now, the implementation of the recommendations is to follow, and we know that this will be done with the same level of commitment that they have displayed so far with the UPR. We wish Zambia every success in this process, and we encourage them to continue working as they have so far, so as to make even greater gains in the promotion and improvement of human rights in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. The delegation of Egypt has the floor.
Madam Vice President, the delegation of my country would like to welcome the high-level delegation of the Brotherly Republic of Zambia in this session held to adopt the UPR report on Zambia based on the debate held in November 2017. We recall with appreciation the active efforts made by the Republic of Zambia to enhance the situation of human rights in the country in the various fields. This was crowned with the adoption of an amended constitution in 2016. The constitution provides for strengthening the National Human Rights Commission, as well as the establishment of key institutions to implement Zambia's human rights obligations. There were also laws that were adopted for the rights of persons with disabilities and to promote gender equality, as well as protection for the rights of refugees. We are pleased to see that Zambia accepted recommendations made by Egypt for the advancement of the rights of women and improving the situation of persons with disability. We sincerely hope that the efforts of the government of the Republic of Zambia will be successful in implementing accepted UPR recommendations for the sake of improving the situation of human rights and thereby the promotion of progress and prosperity for the brotherly Zambian people. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Now the floor goes to ECR.
Madam Vice President, Ethiopia welcomes the delegation of Zambia to this session of UPR Working Group. We thank the delegation for the oral update and commend it for identifying priority areas in the promotion and protection of human rights. We particularly thank Zambia with appreciation for accepting the recommendations given by many delegations, including by the Ethiopian delegation, on the continuation of intensifying Zambia's effort in combating human trafficking and to further continue boosting birth registration by the existing nationwide awareness campaign among Zambian citizens. Finally, Madam Vice President, by supporting the adoption of the UPR outcome of Zambia, Ethiopia wishes to encourage the delegation of Zambia to continue its constructive engagement with the Human Rights Council in the promotion and protection of human rights. I thank you.
Thank you. Honduras has the floor.
Thank you, Madam. Honduras would like to welcome the distinguished delegation of Zambia, and we commend them for the transparency, cooperation, and constructive spirit with which they worked throughout the review. Our state is pleased with Zambia's commitment for the protection of the rights of children and their support to the recommendation of Honduras on the human, technical, and financial resource allocations that would be required for the proper operations of the High Commissioner Office on Children and for sexual and reproductive health of women and girls. Likewise, we are pleased to see Zambia's commitment to the adoption of a comprehensive policy that would allow to effectively combat gender-based violence against women and girls. We hope that Zambia will reconsider their position on the abolition of the death penalty and to strengthen their legal framework for the protection of human rights, consider examining the ratification of the International Convention on the Protection of All Migrant Workers and their families, as well as approve a legislation to counter discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity, and that will protect the rights of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Kenya.
I thank you, Madam Vice President. Kenya warmly welcomes the delegation of Zambia to the adoption of their UPR report. We thank Zambia for their constructive engagement during the UPR review and for the update they have provided today, which underlines the determination to improve on the implementation of human rights for all in their country. We commend Zambia for accepting many recommendations, including 3 made by Kenya, which called for increase in funding the health sector, implementing laws aimed at protecting the right to life of the unborn, and on the education reforms to increase the quality of education. We call on the international community to support Zambia in their efforts to increase implementation of recommendations they have accepted. Kenya wishes Zambia success in their efforts to implement the process of that cycle of the UPR process and support the Council in adoption of their report. I thank you.
Thank you. Now Lesotho has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Lesotho wishes to warmly welcome the Zambian delegation to the working group. We commend Zambia for its positive engagement throughout the UPR process. We further wish to applaud Zambia for accepting most of the constructive recommendations, and we believe that Zambia will implement these recommendations in earnest. We recognize the measures which Zambia has taken since the last review in a noble quest to promote and protect human rights in the country. We note that Zambia amended the constitution and enacted a number of legislations, including the Gender Equity and Equality Act, the Public Protector Act, and Higher Education Act, among others. More importantly, we note that Zambia has integrated human rights in the school curriculum and in training modules for defense and security personnel, and also incorporated international human rights treaties in its national legal framework. Madam Vice President, whilst Zambia has made remarkable progress, we remain cognizant of the challenges which Zambia is grappling with in the field of human rights. We therefore echo her call for continued support from the development partners and the international community in general. Finally, Lesotho wishes the government of Zambia every success in its endeavors to promote and protect human rights within the country, and recommends that the working group adopts its UPR report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Now Libya has the floor.
Madam Vice President, the delegation of Libya welcomes the distinguished delegation of Zambia. We thank it for its active participation in the UPR and its commitment to promote and protect human rights. We welcome progress made in Zambia in implementing UPR recommendations through efforts for the advancement of women and particularly the implementation of CEDAW provisions. This is a reflection of the positive engagement of Zambia with the UPR and its commitment to further promote human rights. Finally, Madam Vice President, my delegation recommends to the Council to adopt the working group UPR report on Zambia. Finally, we would like to express to Zambia our sincere wishes for every success in the promotion of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Madagascar has the floor.
Merci, Madame. Thank you, Madam Vice President. The delegation of Madagascar wishes a warm welcome to the delegation of Zambia and thanks the delegation for the supplementary information on the presentation of the final report after the third cycle of the UPR. We note with satisfaction a number of recommendations accepted by the delegation of Zambia. During its review during the 28th session at UPR in November 2017, my delegation welcomes the activities conducted by the Zambian authorities to guarantee the rule of law and respect of human rights in the country. In particular, those measures adopted to promote the rights of women, including provisions for reform in the Constitution, as well as the adoption of legislation integrating the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women into domestic law and the relevant regional instruments as well. Madagascar very much encourages Zambia to continue with this work to maintain the efforts deployed to strengthen the respect of human rights and to consolidate the rule of law in the country. To conclude, my delegation urges the Council to adopt this report and wishes Zambia every success in implementing those recommendations accepted. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Merci, Madame. This was unfortunately the last state speaker that we could accommodate as per the new practice. All statements, including those which could not have been delivered due to time constraints, should have been uploaded online. And I will now give the floor to the other stakeholders to make their general comments on the outcome. First speaker on my list is Save the Children International.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Save the Children wishes to commend Zambia for accepting UPR recommendations to enhance the respect and protection of children during its third cycle review. Save the Children particularly welcomes the acceptance of the recommendation on child participation from Slovakia and values the government of Zambia's commitment to promote child participation in formal consultative processes that require citizens' contribution. Save the Children further commends the government for its good working relationship with non-governmental organizations in Zambia. However, Save the Children recommends that the government of Zambia prioritize the following measures. 1. To expedite the process of the enactment of the Children's Act and to finalize and present the Child Code Bill in Parliament in order to harmonize the various pieces of legislation for the protection of children. 2. To ratify all 3 optional protocols on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. 3. To raise the minimum age of criminal responsibility from 8 to 12 years and provide adequate protection of children, victims, and witnesses of crime during trial so as to ensure full protection for juveniles in conflict with the law. 4. To combat child poverty and malnutrition by strengthening child-sensitive social protection programs. Save the Children considers child poverty as a root cause of exclusion and therefore threatens the right to life and survival of children. And 5. To put in place a systematic and organized process to empower all children to meaningfully engage in community, district, and national decision-making processes. There has been steady progress towards increasing allocations to funding of social services such as education and health. More efforts, however, are needed to reverse the downward budgetary allocations in these sectors in order for Zambia to meet the African thresholds set in the Abuja and Dakar Declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Next speaker is Swedish Association for Sexuality Education.
Vice President, RSFU delivers this statement on behalf of WILDAF, CRE, and the Zambia Platform on Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights, integrated by 23 local NGOs. During the interactive dialogue, Zambia stated its commitment to upholding the principles of the UPR mechanism. We therefore wish to acknowledge the great strides the state has made in domesticating some international instruments, notably the CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol through the enactment of the Gender Equity and Equality Act. We actually commend the state for accepting 183 out of the 203 recommendations received by the state. We would also like to underscore that while the state has committed to curbing the high rates of maternal mortality, Zambia's acceptance of the recommendation to limit abortion provisions are in contravention of its obligation under CEDAW and Maputo Protocol, which requires states to progressively realize the rights contained therein and to avoid any regressive measures to jeopardize women's rights. We therefore wish to express our concern on the statement by Zambia that all outstanding issues relating to human rights will be addressed by the 7th National Development Plan, which does not comprehensively address human rights concerns, particularly sexual and reproductive health. We urge the government to prioritize the holding of the people-driven referendum on the Bill of Rights in good faith in order to actualize the objectives of progressive national laws. This would require meaningful consultation, non-partisan process, and as part of the larger CSO, we hope to work with government in ensuring the success of future national referendum on the Bill of Rights in Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Next speaker is Action Canada for Population and Development, please.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. Action Canada makes the statement on behalf of the Engender Rights Centre for Justice, Friends of Renka, Generation Alive, Trans-Bantu Zambia, the Lotus Identity, Women's Alliance for Equality, the Coalition of African Lesbians, and the Sexual Rights Initiative. During the interactive dialogue, Zambia stated its commitment to the UPR process and that it would spare no effort in promoting and protecting human rights and implementing the outcome of the UPR. While it is promising that Zambia has now accepted the majority of recommendations, Zambia continues to note recommendations that relate to violence and discrimination against persons on the grounds of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Similar recommendations were also raised during Zambia's first UPR, where they met the same response. Too often, conservative interpretations of culture and religion are used to justify and reinscribe colonial-era laws and policies that criminalize any aspect of sexuality and gender that is seen as non-normative or going against the reproductive standard. These laws and the stigma and discrimination that result from them pose a grave risk to the lives and well-being of women and girls, sex workers, and LGBTI persons, leading not only to increased vulnerability, but also reducing their access to services, redress, and justice. Zambia must comply with its regional and international commitments and obligations by repealing laws that criminalize same-sex conduct, sex work and abortion, and ensure access to sexual and reproductive health services is made available to all. In doing so, Zambia will send a strong message that no one is disposable or deserving of discrimination, violence, social and economic exclusion. It is only then that Zambia will ensure that really no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Next speaker is Franciscans International, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Franciscans International and the Extractive Industry Transparency Alliance in Zambia welcome the UPR recommendations calling for the protection of human rights and the environment in the context of extractive industries. We appreciate Zambia's reiterated commitment under the UPR to increase efforts to ensure effective governance of its natural resources. However, there are significant governance gaps that must be filled in order to counter the negative socioeconomic and environmental impacts of extractive industries. Key governmental institutions involved in the management of natural resources are not adequately decentralized. They lack coordination, capacity, and the resources to effectively assume their mandate. This makes it difficult for local communities to access the information necessary to make informed decisions and meaningfully participate in the governance process. We regret that Zambia merely noted the recommendation put forward by the Netherlands in this regard. We recall that the effective participation of communities affected by projects of exploration and extraction of natural resources on their land is not only required to comply with human rights obligations and principles, but is also key to achieving sustainable development. Therefore, we recommend that the government ensure meaningful community engagement, notably through the timely and comprehensive disclosure of project-related information in an adequate and accessible form. Independent and thorough human rights impact assessment should be carried out before the start of the project and at the different phases after. The majority of local communities have been affected by a multitude of human rights violations and abuses due to mining operations in the Copperbelt and the northwestern provinces. In particular, communities have been deprived of their right to adequate housing, food, and land as a result of forced evictions. The state is obligated to ensure access to remedies and reparations to victims of human rights abuses committed by extractive industries. Therefore, we recommend that Zambia adopt specific legislation on development-based displacement, resettlement, and compensation for affected communities, providing clear guidelines to prevent forced evictions and to ensure sustainable and adequate reparations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Associazione Comunità Papa Giovanni XXIII, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We welcome the report of the Working Group on the UPR of Zambia and commend the Government of Zambia for constructive participation in the UPR process. Since 1985, APG 23 has been carried out diverse and wide-ranging development projects in Zambia for the promotion and protection of the right to food and adequate nutrition, the right to an inclusive education, and the rights of persons with disabilities. Therefore, given our experience, we commend the progress made on these issues by the Zambia government and note with appreciation that it supports a set of recommendations proposed during the recent UPR session. Yet, we are still concerned about some practical obstacles that prevent the fulfillment of these rights, and we regret that the efforts made until now have not been sufficient to reach the desired results. Thus, we would like to make the following further recommendation to Zambia. Make further funding available and better allocate the necessary resources for food and nutrition, education, and social and labor inclusion of people with disabilities. Strengthen the nutrition education in schools. Establish a national schools mapping mechanism for planning renovation in order to upgrade the conditions of education facilities. Ratify the optional protocol to the CRPD. Create more centers offering training and socialization opportunities to people with disabilities, as well as adequate and comprehensive community-based services. Carry out national awareness-raising programs for social and labor inclusion of intellectually disabled people. Develop coordinated policies for the inclusive education of children with disabilities, as well as mandatory trainings for teachers. Involve disabled pupils, parents, and community in school activities to share their expertise. In conclusion, we welcome the decision by Zambia to ensure the effective implementation of UPR recommendations through the establishment of a permanent governmental mechanism to liaise with all relevant stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Amnesty International.
Madam Vice President, free expression and space for genuine dialogue and debate are essential to achieving respect for human rights and political stability. Amnesty welcomes assurances by Zambia that it is committed to promote and protect human rights through its engagement with the UPR. Of the 213 recommendations made to Zambia by other states, it is extremely disappointing that more than half of these did not enjoy its support. In particular, we regret that Zambia did not accept recommendations to guarantee the rights to freedom of assembly, association and expression, and to abolish the death penalty. The authorities continue to stifle freedom of the press, journalists, human rights defenders and activists who express dissenting views. We denounce all attacks against activists and journalists and are deeply disturbed that Zambia has rejected recommendations to guarantee their ability to carry out their work without fear of persecution. The musician Fumba Chama is facing constant intimidation and threats to his life by state agencies because his music is critical of President Lungu. This would indicate a growing intolerance of free speech. We are also concerned by the use of criminal libel laws to silence critics of the ruling party. On the 10th of January, government critic Dr. Kwalela Kafunya was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment on charges of defamation of the president. We call on Zambia to drop the charges against Pilato and release Dr. Kafunya. Madam Vice President, we welcome Zambia's acceptance of a recommendation to reform the Public Order Act and encourage it to consult with civil society in ensuring it complies with the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the ICCPR. We also welcome the reduction in inmates on death row. However, we are concerned that the death penalty continues to be handed down. We call on Zambia to abolish the death penalty. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Madam. Next speaker, Civicus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, the Zambia Council for Social Development and Civicus welcome the government of Zambia's engagement with the UPR process. We also welcome the government's presentation of the Access to Information Bill to Parliament, recognizing that it has yet to be enacted. However, in our joint UPR submission, we documented that since its last review, Zambia has not implemented 3 of the 4 recommendations relating to civic space. The existing legal frameworks that impede and restrict civic space, including the Public Order Act and the Non-Governmental Organization Act, remain in place and have not been amended or repealed since Zambia's last UPR examination. The NGO Act unduly restricts the participation of civil society through punitive sanction for non-compliance and excessive discretion of the state to dictate the activities of civil society organizations. Similarly, we are concerned with the continued use of the Public Order Act to unwarrantedly limit the exercise of the right to freedom of peaceful assembly. Civic space came under serious threat during the state of emergency declared by the government in July 2017. 6 activists are currently before the courts after being arrested in September 2017 following a peaceful protest held outside of Parliament demanding accountability for the governmental expenditure. Several journalists have also been arraigned before the courts to answer charges related to the publication of official secrets, defamation, and being in possession of seditious materials. After the 2060 general election, 3 private broadcasting stations had their licenses suspended due to perceived support for the opposition. Madam Vice President, Civicus and Zambia Council for Social Development call on the government of Zambia to take proactive measures to address this concern and implement recommendations to create and maintain, in law and in practice, an enabling environment for civil society. We thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Next speaker is Rado.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. RADO welcomes the report of the Working Group for the UPR on Zambia. We congratulate the government of Zambia on the progress made in human rights since its 2nd cycle review, namely the completion of the constitutional review process, the enactment of the Persons with Disabilities Act No. 6 of 2012, the Gender Equity and Equality Act No. 22 of 2015, the strengthening of public accountability and anti-corruption mechanisms, the incorporation of human rights education into the school curriculum, as well as the ratification and domestication of international agreements through the enactment of the Ratification of International Agreements Act No. 34 of 2016. Several challenges remain in the fulfillment of human rights in Zambia. In this regard, RADO regrets the retention of the death penalty by the government. This deplorable practice is a serious violation of human rights, which primarily violates the right to life and further constitutes cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment. We highlight that being a de facto abolitionist state is not enough to protect the right to life and human dignity. We thus urge the government to ratify the 2nd optional protocol to the ICCPR in order to abolish the death penalty both in law and practice. We encourage Zambia to continue on the path of cooperation and constructive dialogue with the view to further strengthen the protection and promotion of human rights in the country, especially the advancement of women, as well as the engagement in the ongoing abolitionist efforts of the African Commission's Working Group on the Death Penalty. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This was the last speaker on the list. Before giving the floor to the delegation of Zambia for concluding remarks, allow me to note that based on the information provided, out of 203 recommendations received, 183 enjoy your support, while 19 recommendations are noted. One recommendation is supported in part and noted in part, and this delegation has clearly indicated beforehand which part is noted and which is supported. I now give the floor to Mrs. Margaret Mary Lungu Gaemba, Chargée d'Affaires ad interim, Minister Council, Deputy Permanent Representative of Zambia, for her concluding remarks. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Republic of Zambia values the constructive comments from the floor. We have noted from the statements that various thematic issues require urgent attention, such as the rights of women and children, the death penalty, a review of abortion laws, and the expanded Bill of Rights, among others. I would like to reiterate our expression of gratitude to you, Madam Vice President, the Secretariat and the Troika, Switzerland, China and Kenya, for their support. Zambia remains committed to the UPR process and shall continue to intensify our efforts to implement human rights activities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kayamba, for your presentation and for the fruitful participation of Zambia in the entire UPR process. I now propose that the Council adopts the decision on the outcome of the Universal Periodic Review of Zambia as it appears on the screen. I see no objections, so the decision is adopted. We will now proceed with the consideration of the outcome of Japan, and I beg your pardon for a short technical break, few seconds. Thank you.